Only about 1/3 of the league is actually playing for anything of an importance in Week 18, which makes it insanely hard to figure out who to trust in fantasy football. But don't worry, we are here to help you make those tough decisions on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here to help you win your fantasy football leagues. And if you're still playing in Week 18, we got your back. We'll help you today. Or if you just want to play DFS, we are here to help. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk. And when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, we're going into Week 18. And the big reason why you don't have your fantasy leagues still play in Week 18 is because so many teams are playing for absolutely nothing. A lot of teams are benching their starters, but teams still playing for something important include the Bengals, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Lions, the Vikings, the Broncos, the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, and the Falcons. Like, those are top teams that are going all out right now. Kind of the Commanders and the Packers. The Commanders say they're going all out for this win. Commanders and Packers are fighting for that number 6 seed. That's all you can get there, but it does make a big difference, right? Because you either have to play the Eagles or the Rams. So I get them wanting to compete for that number 6 seed. So you got the Commanders and Packers still needing to try to go, and then the Chargers as well. Now, they will know, though, if the Steelers win on Saturday night, they don't really have anything to play for at all because their seed would be locked in at number 6. So keep that in mind. Guys resting their quarterbacks. Let's get into the quarterback rankings, but really quickly, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, all not playing. I guess Josh Allen will start, but then sit. And then we don't know about CJ Stroud, but it seems like, why would you play him, right, as the Texans?
Yeah.
And then Brock Purdy is injured, and Tua could miss the game also with a hip injury. So let's start with our quarterback rankings here now that we got that covered. Vinny, Jared Goff and Sam Darnold. I mean, that Sunday night game should be huge, right? Are they the best plays of the week outside of the top 3 in Lamar, Jaden Daniels, and Burrow?
Yeah, I think you could throw in one more player there is Baker Mayfield. I just don't know how much he's going to throw against the Saints, but we also didn't know how much he was going to throw against the Panthers, and they were relentless in throwing in that game and putting up some numbers there. So I think you squeeze in Baker Mayfield into that group because they're still playing for the division title over the Falcons. So that's one player. And then you can also look at Michael Penix. They're also motivated here with the Falcons, and he looked pretty good last week. But yeah, these are the main guys. And the best thing about Jared Goff and Sam Darnold, they're playing each other in a game that should be very high scoring and has the highest total of the week. It is their Sunday night game. The division title for the NFC North will be on the line. Both these guys have lit it up of late. They both come in red hot. They're both dependent quarterbacks in terms of needing receivers and line and running game, all that to work. But fortunately, both of these teams have all that operating at a very high level. Jameson Williams has come on as the number 2 beyond Ross St. Brown. You got now TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison helping Justin Jefferson. So it's almost like watching 2 quarterbacks at work in similar situations. So this is the best thing that they're playing each other because there's so much on the line. I mean, you can go from 1 all the way down into a top wildcard spot. You go 1 to 5. That's a big difference in maybe getting to the Super Bowl. So these teams will be motivated. These quarterbacks will be playing well. The only reason they're down behind like Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels and just Burrow and Mayfield is the fact that they're not going to give you much running. I know Mayfield doesn't do a lot about that, but he's red hot as well. So that's the only reason I have them behind those guys. And again, they can also get their touchdowns, especially the Lions, pilfered from the ground game.
I do have Sam Darnold ahead of Baker, and then Baker 1 spot ahead of Jared Goff. So I have Sam Darnold at 3 this week, actually ahead of Joe Burrow. But obviously, if I'm in my finals, like if I'm playing Week 18 finals, I'm sticking with Joe Burrow. He's been absolutely amazing. I'm not going to get cute there. But DFS, I think Sam Darnold's one of the best values this week. And I like him slightly more than Jared Goff in this matchup just because of how bad the Lions defense is right now. But Darnold's been on fire, scoring 3 touchdowns in each of the last 2 games. And the Lions have just been giving up so many fantasy points to quarterbacks. So really love Sam Darnold this week. Now, what about the others? Because it gets thin real quick. I mean, you even just mentioned Michael Penix Jr. I'm not thinking about playing him or starting him. I get it's the Panthers. I don't know. But you got Bo Nix playing an important game. Now, it's not an important game for the Chiefs, so that might be even better for him. Would you trust Bo Nix more or Jordan Love, who, again, playing for the 6th seed, but not necessarily might not be going all as out as the Broncos are?
Yeah, the Bo Nix situation also is the Chiefs are playing backup defenders. You won't think they'll take any chances when any guys are a little bit banged up on that side. So it's at home. Bo Nix typically plays better at home. This team is very good at home, 5-2 overall. So this is what the Broncos do, and they're really efficient. They can move the ball there. And you don't expect them to run the ball on the Chiefs, even though they have the backups. The Chiefs have a fundamentally good run defense, and who knows? I mean, between Jaleel McLaughlin and anyone in that backfield, we just don't know like how much they're going to run the ball with whom. So it's more about Bo Nix and the passing game. They'll take some breaks in the secondary as well. So I do like Bo Nix quite a bit. Then you got to look at Love and Herbert. Again, the trick is how much are they going to be putting the ball up. I mean, Love has such a great matchup at home, and then Herbert could be just kind of a tune-up against the Raiders on the road. So it's really hard to know how much volume, but I think you go in the order of what do these guys have to play for? And then you look at, okay, is there a dual threat there? Okay, that's why we like Lamar Jaden. Then we go with, okay, now Burrow's going to be motivated. The Goff Darnold passers are going to be motivated. You look at Mayfield, and then you go, okay, who's next? It's going to be Bo Nix. And that's how you have to kind of look at it if you're playing at a week 18. Got to look at also the personal motivation, not just for these quarterbacks, but for the receivers. I mean, you have Mike Evans looking for another big milestone year. So that might push Baker to throw a lot to Mike Evans this week, even if they have the game under control. So some of these other things you need to look at. I think for the Packers, they just need to play well, right? Their offense needs to win, get on track. And so that's important. And Justin Herbert, I think of all these quarterbacks, doesn't need a lot because they destroyed the Patriots last week. I think they'd be fine if they had to sit him and still actually beat the Raiders this week.
Yeah, I'm worried about Justin Herbert for sure. I mean, I know he had a bigger week last week, but I mean, how many games has he just completely done nothing? And he's had under 14 fantasy points in more games than not, 9 of his 16 games this year. So with them being able to run the ball against the Raiders, and also if the Steelers win, you're kind of screwed there about even Justin Herbert playing and kind of staying away from that. But Russell Wilson's a guy that I think is very interesting this week. Yeah. It's been terrible for him in this Steelers offense lately. They've had 300 matchups against the Ravens, Eagles, and Chiefs. That stretch went terribly, right? But now they get the Bengals. Last time we saw a massive game from both of these offenses. And Russell Wilson had over 400 passing yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He had a huge fantasy day. And the Bengals, when they're facing a team with a winning record, stink on defense. I mean, they're the worst team in the league when it comes to the facing those type of opponents. So I think Russell Wilson's a really solid play this week.
Yeah, he's going to have to put the ball up too. Joe Burrow's on fire, and the Steelers are motivated to win this game. I mean, it's kind of interesting, the backdrop. Maybe the Ravens pull away in that Browns game, and then you get an idea for the primetime game. But that's the one thing you worry about too, because they'll know a little bit about what's going on in their division. But again, I think the Steelers want to play well going in because they could have a immediate tough matchup against, say, the Texans right away, right? In a 4-5 game. If the Ravens were able to win their games, they know they'll have the wild card. So I still think they want to play well. I look at Wilson again. He's behind a lot of those guys we just talked about because it's Wilson and he's been a bit up and down. But he does have George Pickens back. That can make a difference here. Pat Freiermuth has a good matchup. So they're Pats to Wilson putting up some numbers, even if it's like 250-2 and the Bengals pull away in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers really need to win this game. It's not – I don't think they're going to win the division. The Ravens will take care of the Browns easily, I think.
Easily,
but there's a massive difference between being the 5 or 6 seed, and the Chargers only would have to win against the Raiders to drop down the Steelers to 6. You either get to go play the Texans or have to go play the Ravens. That's a massive jump. So the Steelers desperately need to win this game, even if the Ravens win earlier to knock them out of division contention. But lastly here with quarterbacks, any of the backup quarterbacks starting that you consider, like Mitch Trubisky starting, he's going to get in right after Josh Allen gets his start to keep his streak alive, or Josh Dobbs for the Cardinals, Carson Wentz for the Chiefs, Jimmy Garoppolo for the Rams. I would say Josh Dobbs is pretty interesting. We saw him come to the game late last week. He scored right away. We know last year with the Vikings, he had some really solid fantasy days. So with his legs, I think Josh Dobbs is a startable asset. Obviously, behind all the top guys, definitely. But if in DFS, he could be a really sneaky start.
Yeah, I think the problem with the top guys is they're going to be missing those other backup guys. They're going to be missing some of their receiving core too, right? They're going to sit players where, the 49ers are still playing for a bit of a pride situation here. Dobbs is got a little revenge on his mind as a former Cardinal. Looked pretty good there last year. And again, he's got the keys to a lot of really good weapons there. So you look at that. I'm just concerned about these other guys, the Mitchell Trubisky's, Carson Wentz, Jimmy Garoppolo, because, again, you could have key receivers out for these teams. The other team might be motivated a little bit to finish on a high note, even if they're not playing too much. In the Broncos situation, they're playing for a lot, and it's on the road, so it's a little tricky. The Seahawks and Patriots might step off the gas a little bit because they just don't have anything. They have nothing to play for as well. So you got to really examine all the situations. Like I said, the guy who plays, he's not really a backup. I'll just say that. It's Michael Penix Jr. I think the Panthers stink that much. And he showed me something last week at the end of the game, rallying them, putting them in position. He didn't touch the ball in overtime, or things might have been a different story last week against the Commanders. But he definitely has an arm. He definitely has a very good matchup this week. It could be a Bijan Robinson scoring fest, and it easily could be against the Panthers, but the matchup is good enough, right? I think the Falcons saw the Bucs just pick them apart totally, and you could see that happen in the road situation for the Panthers this week. So I'd be much more interested in playing Penix over any of those guys we just mentioned.
I think that's fair. I think I'll have Penix and Josh Dobbs ranked very closely together.
Mm-hmm.
I have Dobbs one spot ahead, actually, 13 to 14. So they're both close in my rankings. Let's transition over to running back talk. Again, like Saquon Barkley is not going to be playing, going for that record. He doesn't get to play. James Cook probably won't be out there much. Kyron Williams probably won't be playing. I don't know who else. Yeah. Isaiah Pacheco, Joe Mixon. We'll see how much he plays, but we'll help with those running back rankings right after a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Gametime app. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You get a panorama view of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And then they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. Event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantee, even job loss assurance. You get to take the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, you just create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. I think one of the toughest decisions this week at wide receiver with, some of these top guys sitting out because their team is doing so well, but De'Von Achane, right? The Dolphins are fighting for that last playoff spot. There's still a tiny sliver of hope that if the Broncos lose, they have a chance. But De'Von Achane, when he doesn't have Tua, is so incredibly bad for fantasy. And right now, it seems like the Dolphins are leaning towards thinking they're going to have to start Tyler Huntley. There's still hope that maybe Tua can go. But if it's Tyler Huntley back there and not Tua, I'm not playing Achane. These are the 5 games that Tua's missed this year, and Achane scores 7.3, 4.4, 2.2, 9.5, 4.8.
Yeah, those are pretty brutal in terms of those numbers. And it's just looking at Achane, I mean, he gets a lot of checkdowns from Tua, and I think that's what really helps his scoring. But when you look overall, I just see this offense goes in the tank totally with Tua. I mean, last week we were lucky that Tyreek Hill blew up, and you have Tyler Huntley, who's a running quarterback, so that always takes away the checkdowns, right? You're not going to have that little short passing game outlet. Like, I don't want to touch him at DFS. I think if you're still playing in a season league for some reason into week 18, then you could still look at him, but I would downgrade him to more of a flex play this week. That's how far I would drop him from RB1 to flex. Like, I still think you have to play him because he's De'Von Achane, and the Jets have kind of been up and down. I don't know if they've totally quit, but it is week 18. Defensively, they haven't been all that good. So that's the biggest reason. the name, the talent, and matchup more so than the quarterback situation is why I'd go with him. But I'd feel a little bit on edge and nervous about what I'm going to get from him this week.
Yeah, I mean, I have them really low. I think there's guys that are starting like a Blake Corum or a Michael Card. Like you might even get like that low where I'd rather start those guys than him if Tua's not playing. Now, if Tua's there, then 100% he's going to be a top 10 guy, right? Like you're going to have him top 10 ranked. Obviously great matchups. You've been riding them. If you want to pay for them in DFS, do it. Like Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, Bucky Irving, all should have amazing games. Jonathan Taylor has been on fire. Josh Jacobs, just looks amazing. So there are no brainers there, but Zach Charbonnet, last week did not do well. And even though he got the start, he played 75% of the snaps, which that's great, right? He's out there a lot, gets 15 carries, but his efficiency wasn't great. He didn't score a touchdown. Just like nobody scored a touchdown in that game against the Seahawks and the Bears. Can you trust Zach Charbonnet this week against the Rams, who are sitting a lot of their starters?
Yeah, they're going to be careful with their defensive players too. And Sean McVay, we know how he operates practices during the week. They're kind of resting. This is why this team's hardly ever facing any big injuries the way they go with it. So they'll be careful. They'll preserve some guys here. So that's going to mean some key defensive guys. And Charbonnet is also motivated, right? I mean, Kenneth Walker has proved this entire season he can't stay healthy. Charbonnet, in most cases, except for last week, has stepped in and been very strong producing. So he has another chance to prove to this coaching staff, hey, maybe I should go in as the lead of this backfield, and Walker is kind of the backup. I know Walker has more explosiveness, but we know the number one ability is availability, and Walker is just always on the injury report with a growing or something like that, like always banged up, where Charbonnet, you put him in, plug him in, he produces. So it's a big opportunity for him. I think he's a pretty good play this week. And it'll be interesting to see what we get from the other situation involving a Los Angeles team and J.K. Dobbins at the Raiders. Like, he was huge last week against the Patriots. He comes back to action, explodes, but it's a bit of a catch-22. Do they want to keep him in the flow of the offense so he's ready for the playoffs, or do they realize, hey, our running game stunk without him. We don't want to risk him in this game. So it's either a little bit boom or bust with Dobbins, but I'm going to lean towards all in because I think they need to give him a few more reps before the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if the Steelers lose, I think you're all in on Dobbins, right? But if they don't have anything to play for, Gus Edwards is banged up. Dobbins has been banged up, I mean, like his whole career, but also this year. It would be really, I think, stupid of them to give him too many carries. It's a great matchup, and he can blow up. And if the Steelers lose and they get a chance to move up, then I'm sure he'll get a lot more touches. But if not, then I'm going to have to move him down. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren talking about the Steelers. They get the Bengals. Najee Harris went off against the Bengals last time they played him in week 13 with 129 yards and a touchdown, scored 25 points in full PPR. Warren had a good amount of receiving yards in that game too, but it's been Warren since that game. Like over the last month after that, Warren has been playing way more snaps than Najee, like almost double the snaps. He's looked way better. He's been the better fantasy producer. I actually would prefer to play Jalen Warren this week over Najee Harris.
Yeah, I think you'd play both of them. Again, you have to drop them both to flex. I mean, Najee did inspire a little bit and had a decent game against the Chiefs last week, but that's what you can expect. I think if you want, like, say, a floor that's decent, you go Najee Harris. If you want a little bit extra ceiling, you go with Jalen Warren. So it's not an exciting ceiling or an exciting floor, but if you need somebody to start, I think you could do a lot worse than the Bengals matchup this week. And again, they have some reason to win this game to keep theirs and maintain their seeding. We'll see. You never know. Crazy things could happen. The Ravens could struggle with the Browns. Who knows? So there's all kinds of things to say this, but that's the tough thing is, some teams are resting, but then some teams might be resting depending on what happens in the middle of the slate. So that's always difficult to navigate through. But I think Harris and Warren are playable. I wouldn't get too excited about either. More flex plays this week.
Yeah, I actually really like Jalen Warren this week. I have him as my running back 12, just because I mean, these
not much out there.
There's not much out there. There's not a lot of guys you can trust. And Jalen Warren, I mean, he's been really solid the last 2 weeks. And the Bengals defense stinks, especially against like these receiving backs, which Warren has had a lot of receptions lately, and the Bengals just give up a ton of receptions to running back. So I like that matchup for him. Now, I brought up that Kyren Williams won't mostly likely be playing much if they're going to sit Matthew Stafford, right? James Conner's on IR. Trey Benson's hurt. So that means Michael Carter's the next man up for the Cardinals against the 49ers defense, giving up a ton of rushing yards. Saquon Barkley's not playing. So you got Kenneth Gainwell likely to get the start, you would think, in a great matchup against the Giants. So rank these guys. Blake Corum against the Seahawks, Michael Carter against the 49ers, and Kenneth Gainwell against the Giants.
Yeah, matchup wise, I think you go with Blake Corum, and also he gets a lot of volume because that's how the Rams operate, right? They usually just turn over to one back, so that's where you can trust. I think Gainwell's in a great spot against the Giants. He'll probably get Saquon Barkley's blessing to run over his old team and give him a little bit of rest for the playoffs. And then I think you go Michael Carter again. Carter sometimes limited. Remember with the Jets, he was a bit of a change of pace back, so I don't know how much he can stand up to that 49ers defense. I know last week we had Jahmyr Gibbs go off against the 49ers, but Michael Carter not in the territory of Jahmyr Gibbs is an all-around kind of versatile back here. So, again, I like Corum and Gainwell right away a bit. So if you had Barkley or you had Kyron Williams, I think you just plug and play those guys, and you feel pretty good about it this week, and just go from there.
Yeah, I definitely am ranking him the same way. Blake Corum, then Kenneth Gainwell, then Michael Carter. Blake Corum should be a really, really nice start in week 18. All right, let's finish up with our wide receivers who we're all in on. And guys we kind of are staying away from this week. Let's first, though, take a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. This is the good time of year to get in because the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action, right? Week 18 is still here with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $250 in bonus bets. Only need to get a $5 bet to win. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. It's a lot of fun here. That's something you could definitely get into with the week 18. Some of the things are tougher, like what teams are going to be motivated to win, who are not, and all that good stuff. So you need to find different ways to play the game. Not only you can bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, the points, all that much more for individual players as well. So check it out. So much more there at FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets with that winning $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook sponsor of the NFL. All right, Michelle, time to close looking at some wide receiver and tight end plays. Let's start with that game that we talked about early with Jared Goff and Sam Darnold. This could be a wide receiver bonanza. It was good to see Amon-Ra St. Brown get going last week. You had Jameson Williams go off. Jordan Addison's been on a heater here of late. Jalen Naylor even found the end zone. You have Justin Jefferson doing his thing. So Vikings-Lions, I think that's going to be great for all the wide receivers involved.
Yeah, I want everyone in this game.
Yeah.
Jordan Addison, Jameson Williams. I think Addison is they're all fantastic plays, right? But Jordan Addison's getting a lot of targets lately, 12, 9, 8, 8, like continually being a big part of this offense. We expect this to be a high-scoring game. He's scoring touchdowns, so definitely want him in my lineup. Jameson Williams also, for a while, it was just that big play like you're waiting on, right? But lately, he has at least 7 targets in 3 of the last 4 games, with 8 in 2 of those games. Like, he's getting more volume. He scored a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. So I want both of these guys in my lineup. I would, if I had to rank the two compared to each other, it would be Addison over Williams, but I like both.
Yeah, it's very close. I mean, they're the number 2s. They're different type of number 2s, right? I mean, Jefferson's kind of the big play guy there, and then Addison's kind of in that Amon-Ra role in the slot. And Jameson Williams more the outside guy, but you're right. He's become a lot more than that big play maker. They've used him more as they've had some other wide receiver injuries, and you've seen him respond to that. And Jared Goff and him are developing some really great chemistry. So I love that. For next year, you could have some wide receiver 2 values along with Addison when we're looking at preseason drafts. Now, George Pickens or Cincinnati or Jerry Jeudy against the Ravens, I think this is a really easy choice for me, but I'll let you go first on this.
So we just got news that it will be Bailey Zappi starting for the Browns, right? So a third different quarterback for Jerry Jeudy. Now, obviously, if this was Jameis Winston back there, it would be Jerry Jeudy with ease. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I mean, he still had a good game with him last week, right? On 18 targets, only got 94 yards on 18 targets. I do think Zappi is better than DTR for Jerry Jeudy, but we don't know if they're going to have that connection. Pickens, on the other hand, he comes back last week for the first time since his hamstring injury, only gets 3 receptions and 7 targets. I think I still lean the Pickens route because of the big play, and it's just you don't have to be as worried about it. Does Zappi and Jeudy have a connection?
Yeah, I'm all the way in on George Pickens this week. I just think in a division game, he's going to get fired up a bit. You can beat the Bengals. I mean, secondary is beatable, definitely downfield, and he's been trying to get tuned up as well, right? Coming back from his injury, and he has that great chemistry with Russell Wilson. I don't have to worry about that one. So I'm going Pickens all the way, whether it's floor or ceiling. I just don't want any part of the Browns offense really this week after the Jerome Ford injury and causing some issues there in that backfield as well.
I want the Steelers to use Pickens more, right?
Yeah.
He's just so stinking good. And that catch from last week was beautiful. And then they don't utilize him
I
enough.
think that sometimes he makes the people upset upstairs
That's fair.
or the coach is upset and maybe he doesn't get what he wants, but I think he'll be fired up for a division game. I mean, so much is on the line. So again, I cannot, if I had to make that decision, and I would just kick myself if I put Jerry Jeudy in over George Pickens.
Yeah. Now we have a hard one in this Bears-Packers game, deciding between these wide receivers, right? DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen was on fire and then came right back down to life last week. He still got 8 targets, though. So that makes me feel a bit more confident that, like, okay, maybe it was just a tough matchup against the Seahawks, and maybe he can get back on track against this Packers defense. DJ Moore, I kind of wanted to stay away from. How often does he just give you like 7 for 60? I just don't think the reward is worth it. Jaden Daniels not playing whatsoever on the Packers side. And then Romeo Doubs, though, I mean, he got 11 targets last week, not for much, 7 receptions, 58 yards. But I think Keenan Allen and Romeo Doubs might be my 2 favorite in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you on Keenan Allen and Romeo Doubs quite a bit. I mean, Doubs is just a guy that has been taking over as the number one with the Christian Watson. There's really no number one in Green Bay. That's the whole issue with this situation. But I'll say this. The Bears have struggled in the slot all season long, and Jayden Reed did have a good game against them the first time. So just keep in mind that these are teams that do better with coverage on the outside than the slot. So that would say Keenan Allen. I think, let's just say this. Doubs, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable than DJ Moore. I'd play DJ Moore if I have to, just because, again, you don't want to leave a guy that could have a big game on your bench. But, I mean, I don't know. Jayden Reed, to me, I would feel a little bit more regret if I didn't put him in there. Because, again, he has good success inside, and that's where the Bears struggle the most with their corners. When you have Jalen Johnson lying there, you got the Packers outside corner. So, yeah, definitely I think it's an inside work in the middle of the field game for both teams.
Yeah, and this is such a huge rival. The Bears are going to be playing all out to keep this Packers to the number 7 seed instead of letting them get the better matchup in the playoffs. I got a rookie wide receiver question for you. This would seem like the silliest thing of all time to ask this earlier in the year, but Marvin Harrison Jr. against the 49ers or Jalen McMillan against the Saints. I mean, I think it's really obvious, right? It's Jalen McMillan with the way he's scoring touchdowns. He's a part of this offense. Marvin Harrison did finally have a good game last week. 6 receptions for 96 yards, but I mean, he doesn't score touchdowns, and it's like he can play against the Rams, but nobody else.
Yeah, as soon as like the Cade Otton injury started to develop here, it's been all about Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan. And McMillan just running wide open for a lot of these touchdowns. They're throwing him short passes. He's darting into the end zone. They're throwing him passes downfield where everyone's forgetting to cover him. I don't know if everyone's just flocking to Mike Evans and trying to shut him down. And Mike Evans is still getting his at the same time. So maybe it's Liam Cohen just knowing how to scheme open both these guys all over the field. And you have to give credit to him. And I loved McMillan. I mean, you look at Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk. He was kind of the forgotten guy at Washington last year playing with Michael Penix, that he just had a lot of talent. Very crisp route runner, can get open, has some speed, and we're seeing that manifest. And it took the injury to Chris Godwin and Cade Otton to make it happen, but he's locked in, and I think he could have a big year. Another guy that we're going to look at with Williams and Addison as a potential wide receiver too, depending on what happens with Godwin next year, and really Liam Cohen. But yeah, he's the better play. But Harrison is still playable this week.
I don't want to play Harrison. McMillan, I feel really good about. Harrison, like, you're most likely going to be playing him in DFS, and I'm just not. That's just not a DFS play I want to go with. And then favorite tight end play of the week, because we're not going to get into tight ends fully here. But I think Pat Freiermuth is the clear answer for me. Anyways, like outside of the top guys, obviously Brock Bowers and George Kittle, if he's good to go, and Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson and, guys like that, they're going to be ahead. Jonnu Smith, though, I am a bit worried about if Tua doesn't play as well. I'm going to have him pretty low. But Pat Freiermuth, great matchup against the Bengals. The Bengals just cannot cover the middle. Against the Bengals just in week 13, he had 68 yards, 6 receptions, a touchdown. He's scoring touchdowns lately at 60 yards last week, and a good matchup against the Chiefs for tight ends. So Pat Freiermuth seems like a really solid play this week.
Yeah, I'll go with one safe one and one. If you're feeling lucky, I'll go with Chigakonkwo. I think they're going to use him more this week against the Texans. Texans are pretty good against the tight end, but I think they'll struggle this week. And I think I look at Kyle Pitts. And don't laugh, but the matchup is that good. And I saw a little twinkle in the eye between Michael Penix Jr. and Kyle Pitts. So maybe he builds on this relationship going in. But, the Panthers stink against the tight end. So I'm getting all choked up doing this. I'm a little bit under the weather, but it's also Kyle Pitts come through one last game.
I did almost put Kyle Pitts here as my favorite play outside the top guys. I just couldn't do it because it's Kyle Pitts, and you just know that as soon as you believe in him, he's going to be terrible. But it is a great matchup, and Penix was looking his way, and you never know. But I like Freiermuth more than Kyle Pitts, but if you want to get crazy and go for upside with Kyle Pitts and DFS, I can understand that. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. If you're listening on YouTube or watching us, hit that subscribe button. Listening on whatever podcast app, give us the like, subscribe, review, all that good stuff. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.